to Tiny Table Games. Today, I want to talk about CCGs in general, and Lorcana in particular. Originally, I'd picked up some Lorcana packs after staying out of CCGs for a while, because I've played them for years, usually end up with giant collections, eventually have to unload them, you know, the usual routine. However, some of the Lorcana packs were kind of interesting. I like Disney a lot, obviously, and I thought, hey, why not? I've been into CCGs since the 90s, pretty much their inception. And surprisingly, for those who might not know, Magic the Gathering was not really the first one to come out. Steve Jackson Games had a few that came out before that they'd been dabbling with, that kind of fell into a collectible sense with like Car Wars, where it wasn't truly collectible in the sense you got blind packs and you'd open up and buy them, but it came in a box set and there'd be some occasional boosters or con exclusive things that you could pick up, so not everybody always had exactly the same deck, but kind of the similar idea. And then Avalon Hill had a few games that came out, like Titan, which was also not really a collectible card game, but those were the early days of trying to convert card games into something other than just poker, pinochle, that sort of thing. And so a lot of the companies were busy experimenting with what hit and what didn't hit. And into that scene, Magic the Gathering showed up. And once that happened, things really started to change, primarily because it made so much money. It inspired a ton of knockoffs and other games to try their own thing and get into the CCG marketplace. I was working in a comic book shop when all this happened, so I had a first-hand view of most of the sales that went on. And there were a ton of games that came out, all similar to Magic in the sense that when Magic came out, the only kind of packaging that was readily available for that was usually like sports card wrappers, which were fairly thin, almost waxy in some cases, at least for the alpha and beta sets. That kind of is the situation. And at that point, nobody had thought that they might ever need to redesign the wrappers for it, and the production lines already existed from sports card lines to just go ahead and crank them out that way, and so that's what happened. Unfortunately, one thing that didn't really ever come up with sports cards too much is that you could see through the wrappers if you were careful and paid attention, which originally nobody thought was going to be that big a deal, but as Magic became popular, even within alpha and beta, the Lotuses especially, at first, they packed the rarest card right on the top. And so everybody who would come into the shop would sit there and study their pack and rub it carefully with their hand in an effort to see through the fairly translucent paper on the front. And if you were an unwise comic book shop owner, you weren't paying attention, and people would go through your whole box that was set on the counter, pick out all the ones that had the rare cards in the front, buy them, and leave you with all the duds. So for a while, in the early days, that became a thing where people would want to watch you open the box so they knew that nobody else had cherry-picked anything out of it, and then they would buy the boosters. While people enjoyed watching you open the fresh box to make sure they didn't get cherry-picked boosters out of it, a lot of the retailers started feeding back to Wizards of the Coast saying, obviously this is not great, people are cherry-picking it, you got to do something and change up the wrappers. So they worked on doing that. The other problem was that the wrappers to this day are somewhat similar in that they use the pressed edges, which is great except for the part where back then the machining wasn't so tight in tolerance, so there was a lot of empty space between the edge of the cards and where the wrapper is, to the point where people could fan the cards while still in the wrappers and check the rest of the cards. That matters because the Wizards' first solution was to not put the rare on the top while they were working on figuring out how to get different packaging, because that's a much longer build process from the production sense. So just changing the pack order kind of worked, except people would literally try to fan the cards within the booster pack. And that was also really annoying if you happen to work in a comic book shop, because then people could potentially mess up the cards or split the booster or whatever, which is why you see in a lot of cases, not just for shoplifting, but because people kept trying to do stuff like that, that a lot of shops started keeping their boosters behind them on the counter, and when you wanted some, they'd pull it forward and stare at you while you picked out your packs. So as soon as Magic hit, within the next year, you had a ton of other ones. There was like Illuminati that came out, Dixie, which was strangely a Civil War card game that was done by Columbia Games, I think it was, who did a ton of war games back in the day, and still do, I think. Spellfire from TSR, that came out pretty quickly and lasted for quite a while. They also used cheap wrappers, and that didn't change for quite some time. They also used lower quality cardstock, so you always had to be careful, or those suckers would bend real easily. Decipher hit the scene big time with Star Trek, which actually, for a while, was just about bigger than Magic, at least locally in some of the areas where I was working. The other one, big one that hit was White Wolf at the time. Came out with Vampire, which was originally called Jihad, but they remarketed it as just Vampire: The Eternal Struggle. And that was also a big one. And let's see, what other? Wyvern, that one came out for a while. That one was good. Galactic Empires, that was interesting. That was a space battle one that was kind of short-lived. And ended up, if you ever went to a comic book shop in the mid-90s, you'd see a big bin in the back, and there was literally just box after box after box of random cards games that you've probably never heard of in there. Galactic Empires was in there. One of the interesting things they did, though, was they were one of the first games to actually introduce foil cover cards for some of their commanders, which was really neat and pretty. Unfortunately, the game didn't sell hardly at all, and I think I was like one of 20 people maybe who had collections of that. It was a fun game, but not when you're playing it just by yourself all the time. So, a year or two go by, and the wrappers improve. Specifically, they took inspiration from, of all places, art cards. Louis Royo, Julie Bell, and some of the collector art cards that you could buy in comic book shops were of the more adult nature, and they always had foil wrappers on them to prevent anybody who shouldn't from seeing, to prevent anyone who shouldn't see them from seeing what the art was, since it was usually borderline pornographic in some cases. So, the only problem is those are obviously more expensive compared to the rest, but with a couple of price point increases and the fact that Magic and Wizards in general and some of the other companies were selling so many cards, it kind of became the default standard, which also brought the price down at the manufacturing facilities because now everybody wanted to foil wrap their cards, not just the art card people. And so as soon as like Decipher and Wizards of the Coast and a couple other companies started jumping on the bandwagon with that, everything changed pretty much permanently, and we've got foil wraps ever since, which conveniently you can't see through. So another thing most of those games I just talked about have in common is I collected all of them. Kind of like, when you work at a comic book shop and you're a card collector and you love games, it's not always the best mix of your paycheck and things you want to buy. Another thing that was going on at the same time, like up through Ice Age with Magic, is that most of the decks that you could buy in the store, in the prepackaged one or the random decks with lands, all came in small square boxes, very similar to what you'd get for a deck of 52 playing cards, because it was the same folding machines basically, just with different art on them, which is why a lot of the restrictions on how big the deck sizes were in the deck boxes that they sold them, that's why, is because that's the cheap level for machining, plus they could store a certain amount within the deck box size that they shipped out, and it just saved them money. So you don't want to sell too many at once because that's what creates a bigger box and you need thicker cardboard for it, etc. So the only other problem with those is they're super easy to shoplift if they're sitting out on the counter in your store. So part of why, like when Pokemon came along and Yu-Gi-Oh! And some of those others, for two reasons. One, like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Especially, both hit mass market more so than Magic or the other card games at the time, because they figured, hey, pegboards at Walmart or Target or whatever, little kids are going to want to see it. They're going to want a bigger display and more visible. And much like with Lorcana, even now, you think, why is this box so big? It's just a deck of cards and some rules. Well, mostly because it's harder to stick in your pocket. And it looks better on a display because you can see it from farther away. With the old Magic deck boxes, you had to know what you were looking for, or you could easily pass by it since, the general color of most of them, with the exception of Ice Age at the time, was like a brown box with different colored wrap around the edges. So not exactly a eye-catching item on the shelf. Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon changed that dramatically with bright yellows and oranges and whatnot. And if you even look at today at the sales, Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Regularly trounce Magic in sales. All that said, there's been a zillion card games. A few of them live on to this day. How about Lorcana? Well, it's done by Ravensburger. They know their puzzles and their games. And it's backed by Disney, of course, with their IP. So probably this game will stick around as long as Disney wants it to, and as long as they choose to license out their IP to Ravensburger, and Ravensburger feels like paying however much that license is. So, that said, let's get into opening these cards. So here's what we're looking at. 2 starters, all from Into the Inklings, and 4 booster packs. And I know there's 2 additional booster packs inside the starters. So, when in doubt, start with the starter. No matter what they do, you always end up just ripping these things apart. This is the first one of these I've opened. Oh wow, that's interesting. They just put it in, hey look, it's almost like the old alpha packaging that I was just talking about. It's about the same level of thickness, sadly, back in the day. So there's that. Which one is this? Who doesn't like good ripping sounds? Huh. Interesting. Pongo. You know, never my favorite person, Pongo. I really didn't like that movie. The live action one was pretty good. This is all about the Dalmatians, huh? Well, I can tell you already, this will not be my favorite deck. I'm more of a cat person than a dog person, but that is okay. All right. Man, stubborn. There we go. Miscellaneous tokens. Instructions, those will be handy since I don't actually know how to do this yet. Everybody's teeny tiny playmat. Set that aside. All right. Now for the good part, the booster that comes with it. People always assume the booster that comes with the starters is not going to be as good as a booster you'd buy out of a regular booster box. I don't know if that's true or not. It always just depends. New card types, locations, probably going to have one of those in every single pack. Let's see what we got. Vault Door, Eeyore, Stitch, Milo and Thatch, Forbidden Mountain, Joshua Sweet, Dewey, Simba, the Jolly Roger, Maui's Fishhook, always nice, and Perdita. Well, I mean, at least that kind of fits, right, with the other one, so that's not bad. And the foil is Skippy the Energetic Rabbit. Interesting. So can't really complain too much, pulling a legendary on the very first pack. I'll take it. And it even ties in with the theme, so good for them. Wonder if that's intentional. Well, we'll find out. All right, with the path cleared out, it's time to open the second starter, Into the Inklands, apparently themed with Moana. Man, I hate these package wrappers. I do miss the old square boxes. Ah, there we are. Tiny, tiny paper. Or thin, I should say. Huh. Wow, that's an interesting foil. It's almost hard to pick it up at first till the light catches it. And Scrooge McDuck. Now that is a weird combo for a deck, I would think. But okay. Scrooge McDuck, the nephews, Maid Marian. Alright. Alright, so theming is questionable in that one as far as how that all ties together. Then the usual tokens, instructions, and the booster. And yes, I'm just throwing that on the floor for now. I'll clean it up a little bit, assuming the cats don't have it halfway across the room in 5 minutes. Alright. New rule, moving damage, and oh. Cool, nothing like having new rules every time you open a package. Alright, what do we got? Bestow a gift. McDuck Manor. I mean, that's kind of funny. You'd think it's Scrooge Manor, but whatever. Razul? Is that his name? I never knew that. Jim Hawkins from, what is that? Treasure Planet? Jetsam, presumably Flotsam's in there somewhere. Dalmatian Puppy, of course. Mr. Smee, man, never liked him. Slidey, definitely did like him. Genie, very nice. Morph, not to be confused with Morph from the X-Men 1993 series. Minnie Mouse, oh, that's a nice one ever. And for the foil, Milo Thatch. Interesting. Not my all-time favorite, and definitely not really tied to Scrooge or Moana, so that would indicate to me that, in fact, it was just a lucky draw that I got Perdita on the other booster. All right, moving on to booster number 3. Rule cards. Agadaba. Zazu. Lena Sabruing. Don't actually know that one. Grandma Tala. Aw. Nottingham. Excellent. Mr. Snoops. Cusco's Palace. Never liked that movie.
Chernobog's Followers. I didn't know he had any, but cool. The Queen. Yeah, that's a cool one. I like the artwork on that one. Moana, another one. But hey, cool. Legendary, always nice. Oh, and Stitch. I think that'd be a Lilo, but alright, cool, works out. And 99 Puppies. Cannot get away from the Dalmatians in this set, but still can't complain too much about that. Alright. Making progress. Voyage, Flotsam. Still no Jetsam? Dispel, Distracts, Eeyore, always in pleasure. Heal what has been hurt. That's crazy artwork, but it looks neat. Dewey, well. Simba, a different Simba, I do believe. Jolly Roger. Piglet, oh, that's nice. Jim Hawkins. Why so many Jim Hawkins? Oh, well. And Magica Dispel. Interesting. Not too bad either. Not a huge Jim Hawkins fans, except the original Treasure Island live-action version back in the day, but still, yeah, moving forward. Okay, 2 packs left, after tidying up just a little bit. Rule cards. Let's see, Peter Pan. The DeVille Manor. Oh, that's a nice one. I like the artwork on that one. Bestow a Gift. Nope, don't like that one. McDuck Manor again. Razul again. Neverland. Magic Broom. 99 Puppies. Tired of those puppies. Sumerian Talisman. Fang. Does not ring a bell. I'm not even sure what one that's from. Pluto. Well, okay. And Rafiki in foil. Well, Rafiki's always cool. Very nice. Last pack. So we got Voyage, Flotsam, Bestow a Gift again, Kit Cloud Kicker. Don't know that one either. Kidda, yeah, that's a good movie. Robin's Bow, always nice. Dive Bomb. Flintheart Glomgold. Does not ring a bell. Audrey Ramirez, man, 20,000 Leagues is certainly represented. Was it 20,000 Leagues, or is this still from Treasure Planet? Might have been Treasure Planet. Treasure Guardian. Only one may enter here. I'm not sure that was the quote originally, but alright. And It Calls Me. Well, at least there's one Moana themed card in there. Alright, well there you have it. Let me know what you thought. And I'm going to read through the rules here and see if I can get a willing volunteer to help me out. And we will start with the starter decks untouched, so we have some idea what we're doing. Then we'll use some of these other cards and mix them in there. And naturally, the rarest cards I get are dogs, right after saying I'm a cat person. I should have gone the other way, and then maybe I would have gotten all Aristocats or something. Anyway, I'm Ray, and this has been Tiny Table Games, and thank you for watching. Have a good day.